Give us this day. Give us this day our daily wind, to fill our sails, ruffle our curtains, caress our faces. Give us this day our daily sun, to light our way, warm our mornings, color each day's endings. Give us this day our daily sea, to voyage on, gather our fish from, refresh our bodies in. This new day of simply living on the earth, of breathing in this earth and all its givings. Give us this day to openly, gladly receive these gifts. Welcome to the latest floating poetry broadcast, and thank you for the gift of your presence here, and for leaning into show 194, coming to you live from the bountiful coast of Rhode Island. This is your poet, Illuminator, and guiding spirit in the poetosphere, Colin Goedecke. A voice here and elsewhere for living our days more fully, more alively, more poetically. Last week's broadcast, if you missed it, was Be a Lighthouse. Looking at the light we have to shine from within us, our own radiance of heart, of spirit, of eyes and face. The beacon others are or have been for us. The guiding light to safe harbor we seek as we navigate our lives. Beholding nature's benevolent luminosities, sun to moon. Also lighthouses themselves and the varied symbolisms they offer. Well, this week on generosity, all the ways we can think of, experience, and witness it, can be generous ourselves, can live in a spirit of giving, appreciate the freely made gifts and gestures of helpfulness of others, and providing their time or encouragement or support, emotional to financial, without a quid pro quo. Also the generousness, the continuous largesse of the natural world, and more. So I've created a bounteous show of cultural commentary, poetry, quotes, anecdotes, and inquiry around this theme. Let's enter for a while together places and motions of generosity and see what they elicit, what we discover. Shelter Harbor, Rhode Island, March 2022, for the airs of life. The joys of inhaling. Sea-salted air. Mountain-peaked air. The resinous morning air of an old-growth forest. Spring-fed, autumn-leafed, deep-wintered air. The luscious air of the tropics. The bone-dry air of the desert. The ionized air before a storm. The fresh-washed air after rain. All the joys of inhaling, drinking from the well of nature's life-pouring, life-giving air. Joseph Stroud, Simple Gifts. The sun makes sugar in the melon, gathers sweetness in us, builds a tower of joy in the paradise we call body. Everywhere I look, I see voices. The loquat's pale gold fruit, the cottonwood's leaves, sprays of lilac. Even the mockingbird high in the walnut tree listens to the loud bees as if within a honeycomb of music. Thank you, Joseph Stroud. Wonderful. Alberto Rios. It opens with this line, one river gives its journey to the next. We give because someone gave to us. We give because nobody gave to us. We give because giving has changed us. We give because giving could have changed us. We have been better for it. We have been wounded by it. Giving has many faces. It is loud and quiet, big though small, diamond in wood nails. Its story is old, the plot worn, and the pages too, but we read this book anyway, over and again. Giving is, first and every time, hand to hand, mine to yours, yours to mine. You gave me blue and I gave you yellow. Together we are simple green. You gave me what you did not have, and I gave you what I had to give. Together we made something greater from the difference. Thank you, Alberto Rios. Came across that in my travels for us, and it was new to me and wonderful. I must read that again a couple of times, as I like to do sometimes. From the writer Annie Dillard's book, The Abundance, wonderful book. One of the few things I know about writing is this: spend it all, shoot it, play it, lose it, all, right away, every time. Don't hoard what seems good for a later place in the book, or for another book. Give it all, give it now. The very impulse to save something good for a better place later is the signal to spend it now. Something more will arise for later, something better. These things fill from behind, from beneath, like well water. Similarly, the impulse to keep to yourself what you have learned is not only shameful, it is destructive. Anything you do not give freely and abundantly becomes lost to you. You open your safe and find ashes. Thank you, Annie Dillard, from her book, The Abundance. Well, I'm sure for you and for me, yes, there are a number, more than I could count, of beautiful people and certainly dear friends that I associate with generosity of heart, of home, and much else. So I'm going to give you a few now and maybe a few later. This is for Irvi Wu, and who is also a master herbalist, as it happens. And this poem for her is Loves and Fishes. Loves and Fishes. This is your time for letting the joy you find from all your loves in life greatly and divinely multiply, not least entering, as you often do, with rod, reel, and boundless zeal, the salty ocean and the bright silver lives and flows of fishes, that you take care to honor in the catching and cooking, honor and savor in the feasting, as you do every day with everything and everyone dear to you. With the loaves of abundance life keeps giving, and you, with your rare heart and large spirit, keep expanding, keep sharing. Love out to her and to every instance now and in the future of loaves and loves and fishes. Yes. On the autumnal equinox, I wrote this, it was also his birthday, September 2023, for Steve Burnett. He's also a fine organic farmer in central New York. Tilling the soil. You till the soil, the fertile soil, the good earth of your good land. Till and tend it with such care, such spirit, such depth of connection to nature, and honoring of its generous gifts, and the land of your earthly self and life. Likewise, love out to him, tilling the soil. I think he's taking a time out through the winter of tilling, having a good, deserved rest. Well, here's for a fellow poet and metaphysician, Joe Adler, April 2017, a fellow Aries. A man of the marrow. A man you feel and love in your bones, whose hands and words sing with heart. A man of whole-souled presence, healing essence, who knows and generously shows you a way to live inside life's miraculous marrow. Love out to Joe. Wonderful man. Honored to know him. And here's another fellow who's actually warming himself up down in Florida. He's in his early 80s. Richard Allen, also a spirited sculptor of life-size horses, among other things. Richard the Tender-Hearted. A lion of a man with a lamb of a soul, whose realm has been the world of spirit, whose reign of self, rule of thumb, has been strong and lifelong, whose role has been to nobly, ever humbly, roam the byways of this land, as a seeker of heartfulness, as a voice of gentleness, a faithful model of kindness, a beautiful embodier and generous bestower of tenderness. Much love out to him, that beautiful fellow. Well, I thought you might greatly appreciate this piece. This is from onbeing.org. If you don't know about On Being, it's absolutely a marvelous resource of all kinds, written and spoken things, interviews and other things. Krista Tippett leads that. Beautifully leads. This is from them, April 19, 2015, The Real Power of Generosity by Sharon Salzberg. Just read you a little bit of that. When we think about generosity, most of us probably don't think immediately of a powerful force, an inner resource, a real tool for changing how we relate to ourselves, to others, and to our world. Instead, we may think of it similarly to how we think of kindness or compassion, qualities that are gentle, tender, potentially self-effacing, and, as a big misconception, more aligned with weakness than strength. Largely, this is because culturally we think of generosity purely in terms of the act of giving something up for someone else. This dynamic, by definition, implies at least some degree of self-sacrifice. Generosity is more than just, quote, giving up. It generates its power from the gesture of letting go. Being able to give to others shows us our ability to let go of attachments that otherwise can limit our beliefs and our experiences. It might be in our nature to think, quote, that object is mine for X, Y, or Z reason, but that thought can simply dissolve. This doesn't just happen passively. We choose to let it through the cultivation of generosity. This doesn't mean generosity eradicates all attachment automatically or immediately. When we practice the act of simply observing our attachments through acts of generosity, they loosen, they become less opaque, less solid. And in that place, we can find greater spaciousness in our minds and tap into a greater sense of inner happiness. From there, we can continue a deep investigation, cultivating further strength and flexibility to look at everything in our experience this way. I'm asked all the time by meditation students who want to create better lives for themselves as well as others, but who feel a little squeamish when thinking about bolstering their own happiness through giving. I commonly respond with, quote, seeing how the universe operates, having a sense of conditionality and cause and effect, that generosity brings happiness to the giver isn't selfish, it's science. A nourishing generosity emerges when we give without the need for our offering to be received in a certain way, perhaps wishing to be recognized or validated, but not needing it. When generosity lets go of these kinds of expectations, it's a movement toward freedom. That's how and why generosity can be a force, a resource, a tool. It is the bread and butter of feeling connected in our lives, to ourselves, to others, and to life itself. And it's a practice. Thank them for that. On Being. Well, now, questions for us, for you, about generosity. I have a handful. What's your definition of it? And your feeling about it. Also, maybe how has that changed, if it has, dramatically over time? What's your spirit of giving? Of yourself or of something meaningful to another or others? And how much do you embody it? Really live it? Give freely from that place, as we were just talking about. And what do you love most about freely giving? What were you taught about it growing up? By your parents or at school? Your beliefs about it then or now, if it's different. What about the most generous act or gesture you've ever made? Where have you been greatly, even wildly generous? And how did that feel? And what did that generosity bring about as a result for the receiver? When were you generous today or this very week? And why were you moved to be? Was it spontaneous? Was it thought out? And how was your generosity received? It might simply have been a kind word and a smile you gave to a stranger. Where have you been graced by someone else's great generosity? Earlier in your life and more recently? Who is the most generous person you know or know of? And what is it about their generosity that touches you, that moves you, versus others? Was there any time you withheld your generosity when it would have made a meaningful difference? Or any time you felt miserly, Scrooge-like? And if so, why so? Where can you be more generous in your life, your days, or today, including with yourself? Have you thought about the many, many ways you can be generous? Generous in your attention, for example, your deep listening, your understanding, your compassion, your forgiveness. With your time or thought, your encouragement. Many, many other forms, which we'll talk a little bit more about. What about the generosity of nature, abundantly there for us, freely giving itself? Its largesse. The generous love our best friends pour into us and partners. What about the bounty of just being alive every day? Waking up into the day, into the world. The abundance of air to breathe, sunlight to bathe us, water to drink. The abundance of paths we can take, of thought or of heart, of career. After all, isn't every moment a generous moment that we're alive in, full of possibility in, that we get to be creating, loving, relating here on earth and with others we care about? Moments to be endlessly glad and grateful for, to savor, and to reciprocate by choosing as often as we can to be generous in return for all the receiving, to be filled with a great spirit of giving, a natural beneficency, beautiful bounteousness. Yes, good things I feel for us to ponder, friends. Good things. So on we go. May 2023. I wrote this for my dear friend Jill Wilson in Mystic, Connecticut, but it really applies in my mind and heart to all of us. Your glass, the glass of your life, is always full of the beauty nature pours into it, of the tides of feelings and wonderings that freely pour through it, of the love those who love you pour into it, of the heart and soul you pour so generously each day to overspilling into it. So true of her. Great spirit, great giving spirit, and many other beautiful qualities. Love out to Jill. And if you know her, you understand all about that. Well, there's much to be said also for choosing, allowing, and letting in good things to our life. Not everybody's good at that. We'll talk a little later. John Steinbeck talked about the act of the ability and capacity to receive and do it well. It's also something as a practice. But yes, the good things in our life like joy and other gifts, and bringing yours to the world as well, in different ways, not just helping other people, but just bringing your beautiful self to generously to each day as you move about. Well, here's a poem I made for a young man, 32 years old, Alex Schwarzkopf, who's making a round-the-world journey on 2 wheels on a motorcycle. And he's actually been away on the road now for 3/4 of a year. Right now he's in Mexico and heading down into South America and then over to, I believe, Europe. This is called Now Voyager. And this was a sort of a blessing on his way as he left for the journey. Now Voyager. A little water, I think, for the journey. As you make your way across countries and continents, cultures and customs, meeting a world of faces and voices, stories and mysteries, as you travel through time and timelessness, consciousness and sentience. May each day bring you gifts of all kinds, gracings generous and spontaneous, especially pure beauty and wonder, deep solitude and adventure, and move you to bring the gifts of your whole self, heartful presence to each day, each voyaging day and night, under the sun, moon, skies, and faithful stars, singing the song of your soul as you go, listening to the song of the earth as you go, to the hymn of humanity, to the hum and great om of the universe. As you walk, ride, and flow freely and easefully through it, may you discover things about yourself and life you never imagined, and things you have, trusting your knowing and unknowing at every turn, and returning home from the far reaches and inner spaces of the world wildly safe and widened, deepened, and ripened. Into the arms of all those you love, all glad for your journey and the embrace of whatever life awaits you, calls with fresh promise and new purpose to you. I continue those wishes for him as he continues his voyage, and as we continue ours day by day. Even if our voyage is not far-flung like that, it's kind of a voyaging each day that we make. And we get up, move through our day, head out into some part of the world, the town, the community, the life. Well, I spoke about the largesse of the natural world that we often take for granted. And this is from Watch Hill, Rhode Island, March 2023. Words from the Earth. Before you ask, land dwellers, sea rovers, tillers, spelunkers, before you ask the questions many ask, have asked since man first appeared here, or may in time dawn in your mind, or form on the lips of your fellow creatures, about me. Look from heart and root across this place, at this oasis, into this whole intelligence I offer you freely, share with you generously, and you might then sense the answers, might well see, feel, and receive your answers. It's a poem by Adam Zagajewski, translated by Claire Kavanagh. Mysticism for Beginners. The day was mild, the light was generous. The German on the cafe terrace held a small book on his lap. I caught sight of the title, Mysticism for Beginners. Suddenly I understood that the swallows patrolling the streets of Montepulciano with their shrill whistles and the hushed talk of timid travelers from Eastern, so-called Central Europe, and the white herons standing yesterday, the day before, like nuns in fields of rice, and the dusk slow and systematic, erasing the outlines of medieval houses and olive trees on little hills abandoned to the wind and heat, and the head of the unknown princess that I saw and admired in the Louvre, and stained-glass windows like butterfly wings sprinkled with pollen, and the little nightingale practicing its speech beside the highway. And any journey, any kind of trip, are only mysticism for beginners, the elementary course, prelude to a test that's been postponed. Thank you, Adam Zagajewski. that very much. I'm not sure I have time to share this. I love Walt Whitman's Song of Myself. I think I'll save that for another time. It's a very long poem, but I was just going to share verse 10. So maybe look that up on the poetryfoundation.org if you like. Verse 10, apropos of generosity, at least for me, from my point of view. But from the Aegean, on the harbor of Corycia, on the island of Kea in the Cyclades, August, summer of 2012, Apospol. Bronze arms, opla, reach up for ripe figs, sika, pomegranates, rhodia, and prickly pears, frankosiskes. Clustered among bright yellow blooms, pluck warm almonds, amygdala, and fragrant lemons, limonia, all from giving branches, as bronze-armed men and women in different dress have reached up through thousands of Aegean summers. Another one from Shelter Harbor, but this was Christmas Day, and it was back in 2021. Here in Rhode Island in the Ocean State. It rained that Christmas. It rained so much that Christmas Day. It rained saltiness from the nearby sea. It rained quiet passion at first light. Rained heat over winter cold skin from a wide pouring showerhead. Rained duck eggs and buttered toast onto plates. Wreathed kale and roast tomatoes round the dishes like holly leaves and berries. It rained memories of cherished childhood Christmas times. It rained gentleness and easefulness and deep appreciation for the gifts life has given, keeps giving, without anyone's asking, and joyful anticipation of all the gifts we can each generously rain from our freely giving selves in return. Well, you know I love thinking of films and songs and, of course, books. But wonderful song came to heart from the 1930s. You know, one of my favorite times for many reasons and things that came forth from there. But it's Pennies from Heaven. You may know it. Well, this is a bit of a footnote from songfacts.com. The song was one of the biggest hits of the 1930s. And reflects the history of that period. It starts with a reminiscence of when the best things were free, the Roaring '20s, and ends with encouragement to not give up, but to wait out the storm, the Great Depression, because good things will follow. Pennies from Heaven are signs of serendipity, and in this song, no matter how much it rains, it will all turn out okay in the end. This optimistic sentiment was especially relevant to a Depression-era audience. And I would say it's as relevant and resonant right now. Maybe I'll give it to you, if you'd like that. A long time ago, 1,000,000 years BC, the best things in life were absolutely free. But no one appreciated a sky that was always blue, and no one congratulated a moon that was always new. So it was planned that they would vanish now and then, and you must pay before you get them back again. That's what storms were made for, and you shouldn't be afraid, for every time it rains, pennies from heaven. Don't you know each cloud contains pennies from heaven? You'll find your fortune falling all over town. Be sure that your umbrella is upside down. Trade them for a package of sunshine and flowers. If you want the things you love, you must have showers. So when you hear it thunder, Don't run under a tree. There'll be pennies from heaven for you and me. Yeah. Well, they're falling all over town for sure, for all of us. I think when we look around, we can see them. Glad someone wrote that song. Molly Fisk, Hunter's Moon. Early December dusk, and the sky slips down the rungs of its blue ladder into indigo. A late quarter moon hangs in the air above the ridge like a broken plate and shines on us all. On the new deputy, almost asleep in his 4x4, lulled by the crackling song of the dispatcher. On the bartender, slowly wiping a glass and racking it, one eye checking the game. It shines down on the fox's red and gray life as he stills, a shadow beside someone's gate, listening to winter. Its pale gaze caresses the lovers, curled together under a quilt, dreaming alone, and shines on the scattered ashes of terrible fires, on the owl's black flight, on the whelks, on the murmuring kelp, on the whale that washed up 6 weeks ago at the base of the dunes, and it shines on the backhoe that buried her. Hunter's Moon. Thank you, Molly Fisk. Thank you. Well, we're talking about different ways to be generous, and came across this from oneinfinitelife.com. They had 76 simple ways to be generous, but I just picked out a few that I thought were more apropos or interesting to me and maybe for us. Write words of encouragement on Post-it notes and stick them in random places. I like that. Sort of a variation on the idea of leaving something in something lovely anonymously in someone's mailbox, a poem or something else that you don't know. Tell someone you're grateful for them and why. I love doing that. Be a day maker and do something to make someone else's day. Be a day maker. Pay for something for the people behind you in the queue. Coffee, ice cream, etc. I know people did that years back. I did too with the pay it forward with the tolls as you drove through. I was surprised you could have, wait, someone's paid for you. That's at least when they had toll takers. Send someone an email with no agenda, just to tell them that you love what they're doing. How about that one? Go to someone's house and cook for them. Truly support someone and be there for them in their time of need. Yeah. When someone shares something with you that they're really excited about or proud of, meet them with their enthusiasm and truly celebrate with them. Buy an extra copy of a book you're getting to give someone else. Send someone a voice clip instead of a text message. Take care of yourself first so you can give to others and be generous from a place of overflow and not lack. And tell someone that they make the world a better place and truly mean it when you say it. And what else would you add to this mix? Well, consider all those who've helped you along the way, helped you make your way in life. Well, I'm ever and immensely thankful for all of my helpers, small and large. This is a poem from February 2017, A Leg Up. I've been given so many in my life, so many helping hands, warmly welcoming arms. At times of my life when I couldn't go it or bear it or figure it out alone. Generous, loving, sometimes surprising legs up that enabled me, empowered me to get to a next essential place. Help I'm beyond grateful for, that I return in any kind to others wherever, however I can. Well, I'd like to share this with you around that. Jack, a faithful listener from California, offered some good thoughts on our theme, especially on reciprocating, as in giving back as generously as we have been given to. Well, years back, and after all the bounty life brought me across a wonderful and rewarding career as a story developer for then leading and emerging businesses and organizations, I decided on a different path, a calling path, to bring my gifts and pour everything I am and have through them as generously as possible into the poetic arts and rely on them over time to sustain my way, but to do so with a humanitarian focus. I'm beyond glad I went this way, that I followed this calling, including making and continuing to make a gift of these weekly broadcasts to you and the public, these last now 3.5 plus years, and also creating and providing a rare oasis of regenesis for seekers through the poetosphere. Some of you know about that, and some have visited, and some have joined, and I thank again those patrons and others, other donators who have shown up at points to help support my efforts with both these broadcasts, and with this oasis that's now out in the world. And, even though my works of service to the wider world, all these givings of myself, my creative spark, my best, are not yet sustaining my whole way economically, giving me a desired livelihood, I believe that will come. So I stay wholeheartedly on course, because I know all that I'm doing is vital to offer, to share out far and wide, in order to nourish, enliven, and encourage so many out there wanting their hearts and minds and spirits wonderfully and beautifully touched and fed and inspired. Especially in our wildly trying and sapping times in our countries and the world. For those of you who have been giving back, praise for you. And for those who can but haven't yet, encouragement to you to begin when and however you can, for whatever you have received, been given, been graced with on your life journey. What if we were all big acknowledgers and big reciprocators? But that. Well, here's one that I've known and loved for the last 35 plus years. Dear, dear friend and mentor and father figure to me, David Melnick, up in Canada. This was back in October of 2023 on his 92nd birthday. An inspiringly giving man. 9 lives. One for each decade you've been living, loving, and making a ruckus, a wonderful ruckus and rumpus here on earth. I know, and rightly so, you've been stealing the show since you stepped so precociously onto the stage in 1931, and have danced from the footlights to the limelights again and again, having the time of your life, and generously giving the gift of yourself, your remarkable mind and heart, all the way. Having witnessed you firsthand, from a young man to a now 65 one, and being graced with the rare bounty, loyalty, and jubilance of your fellowship, I can do stand, from my seat to give you, dear old friend, ever young spirited friend, stardusted friend, a standing, rousing ovation. Love out to David. He'll be 93 this fall. Yes, love out to him if he's listening, to you, David, and many, many more ovations to come, and they continue right now. From me. Well, you might contemplate the opposites of generosity, yes, from ungenerous people and gestures to miserly mindsets and moments. I love the Dickens characters. I'm going to tell you about them in a second, sort of counterpoint to the Scrooges, to the misers. But here's Kay Ryan's poem, Miser Time. Miser time grows profligate near the end, unpinching and unplanning, abandoning the whole idea of savings. It's hard to understand, but time apparently expands with its diminishing. The door thrown wide on sliding hills of high-denomination bills, and nothing much to buy. Thank you, Kay Ryan. So we have the opposite end of that spectrum as the Cheerable brothers, exemplars of true-hearted generosity. So they were Dickens characters that from Nicholas Nickleby, the twins of benevolence. If you've never seen the BBC production, it was like 12 parts. Wherever saw it produced in New York, I saw it twice. It was like an 8-hour extravaganza with like 100 and something actors. Amazing back in time. But I love these brothers. They They were the twins of humanitarian activity, of benevolence and private charity. The merchant charitable brothers, Charles and Ned, represent the kind, individual, and therefore heartfelt philanthropy that Dickens advocated, in stark contrast to the covetousness and parsimony of another pair of early 19th century capitalists given life by Dickens' pen, Jacob Marley and Ebenezer Scrooge of A Christmas Carol. So, you might visit the charitable brothers, or be like the charitable brothers. I also thought of David White in his book of Consolations, wonderful book of essays. He talked about gratitude, and he says it's not a passive response to something we've been given. Gratitude arises from paying attention, from being awake in the presence of everything that lives within and without us. It's the understanding that many millions of things come together, and mesh together in order for us to take even one more breath of air. That the underlying gift of life and incarnation as a living, participating human being is a privilege, that we are miraculously part of something rather than nothing. So, no surprise how essential gratitude is to have and to express and cultivate of all kinds. And yes, I am continuously grateful every day for all the countless things and people and gestures that help make my own life all the more possible, or the more hopeful. I was reminded, too, of a David White story he told. I heard him in an interview or two talking about he was together with his great friend, the philosopher, poet, John O'Donohue, and they were in some country house hotel. They liked to meet and have whiskeys and suppers, and they were talking. He was telling O'Donohue about his father was in dire straits, his much older father, and needed help, and he was thinking of helping his father with some, money that he definitely needed. And he's telling O'Donohue, and he said, well, how much you're going to give him? And, whatever the figure was, I'm going to give him, I'm thinking of giving him, 1,000 pounds. And he says, O'Donohue says, go beyond yourself, David, go beyond yourself. Like, be more generous. And he says, oh, maybe I could give him 2,000. He says, go beyond yourself. Well, he ultimately says this so many times to urge him, he winds up giving his father 4,000 or 5,000 or 6,000 pounds. So it made an enormous difference in wherever his father was at that time. It changed the whole equation, also changed his relationship with his father, which was challenging, and it apparently got quite marvelous sometime soon thereafter. So going beyond ourselves, yeah, we can do it. We can do it, not just with money, of course, but including that. There's a science of generosity. I found in the College of Arts and Letters, I found a piece about it, exploring an essential human value. Thought it was interesting. I'll just have a snippet of it. It's a learned character trait. It says, we use the word generosity to refer to the, quote, the virtue of giving good things to others freely and abundantly. It's a learned character trait. In its mature form, a basic personal moral orientation to life. It involves giving to others not simply anything in abundance, but rather giving those things that are good for others. It is not identical to pure altruism. The virtue of generosity has been central throughout the Western tradition, not always under that name, and the special place of the virtue of hospitality throughout the Middle East has often been noticed. For Christians, the Apostle Paul regarded it as proof of the genuine character of Christian love. It is the third of the virtues of character discussed by Aristotle. The generous person for him is one who gives of his or her wealth in a way that achieves a mean between wastefulness and covetousness. A generous person does not give indiscriminately, but seeks to give in a way that is good and fine, and giving to the right people in the right amounts at the right time with pleasure and without looking out for oneself. I love that. Aristotle. All his wisdoms continue to hold forth for us. Alain de Botton, B-O-T-T-O-N, from the School of Life. He wrote The School of Life and Emotional Education, wonderful handbook of self-refinement where he talks about existential maturity and what emotional intelligence means. And he talks about generosity. The most difficult and most rewarding form of it, he calls charity of interpretation. And I don't have time to go into that with you, but just to say that he says in its widest sense, charity stretches far beyond financial donations. It involves offering someone something that they may not entirely deserve, and that it is a long way beyond the call of duty for us to provide sympathy. Yeah. So, I have other things, which there's the spiritual practice of generosity. Spiritual teachers of our times and earlier across time have spoken about this, especially the Buddha. So there's just some things here about it's not an economic exchange. It's actually a generative act. It does not subtract from what we have. It multiplies the effect we can have in the world. The Buddhist teacher Sharon Salzberg writes in Loving Kindness that the Buddha said, "No true spiritual life is possible without a generous heart." Love that. The Nobel Peace Prize laureate Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and the African understanding of Ubuntu, our humility and generosity, also come from realizing we could not be alive, nor could we accomplish anything without the support, love, and generosity of all the people who have helped us to become the people we are today. Indeed. How true. We must know that. And last, Brother David Steindl-Rast in The Music of Silence marvels at the thought that something as simple as a tip can, quote, lighten someone else's day and maybe even turn it around. Generosity can be contagious in a healthy way. Yes, it can. Well, now coming into our last musings and sharings for this week, for this time together. I had not heard from a certain friend in quite some time, and I wondered about that. Turns out he had passed away. No one let me know. I didn't know a lot of other people that he knew, so maybe that was the reason. But I'd written this for him some years back, but I wanted to honor him. He was such a good man. This was written back in September 2021, and because he left so many generous imprints both on me and others in life. The man who has never stopped, for Stephen Jacoby, who has never stopped being interested, being kind, generously loving his friends and animals, encouraging others, appreciating beauty, caring about the world around him, coming from the heart, living thoughtfully, feeling grateful for the gifts, the many gifts of his gracious life. I always hold him in a good place in my heart. I just am finishing last few pages of May Sarton's Journal of a Solitude, the poet and writer. And I was thinking what a spirit and a joy of giving she wound up having when she, in her 60th year, after decades of struggling, living by her pen, as she went on to channel the human experience in her poems, she found herself at last solvent and reflected on her belief in the, quote, free flow of energy and means. And she wrote this: "Both human problems and money flow out of this house very freely, and I believe that is good. At least it has to do in both cases with a vision of life, with an ethos. I'm always so astonished, after all the years when I had none, that I now have money to give away, that sometimes I may speak of it out of sheer joy. No one who has inherited a fortune would ever do this, I suspect, noblesse oblige. No doubt it is shocking to some people, but I am really rather like a child who runs about saying, 'Look at this treasure I found. I'm going to give it to Peter, who is sad, or to Betty, who is sick.' Being very rich, so far as I am concerned, is having a margin. The margin is being able to give." Wonderful. Thank you, May Sarton. I mentioned earlier John Steinbeck, and he wrote on the true meaning of gratitude, on the art of receiving. This is from his book, The Log from the Sea of Cortez. Just give you what he said here, part of it. "Perhaps the most overrated virtue on our list of shoddy virtues is that of giving. Giving builds up the ego of the giver, makes him superior and higher and larger than the receiver. Nearly always, giving is a selfish pleasure, and in many cases it's a downright destructive and evil thing. One is only to remember some of our wolfish financiers who spend 2/3 of their lives clawing fortunes out of the guts of society and the latter third pushing it back. It's not enough to suppose that their philanthropy is a kind of frightened restitution, or that their natures change when they have enough. Such a nature never has enough, and natures do not change that readily. I think that the impulse is the same in both cases. For giving can bring the same sense of superiority as getting does, and philanthropy may be another kind of spiritual avarice. So interesting. We ought to think more about that. Then he says later, it's so easy to give, so exquisitely rewarding. Receiving, on the other hand, if it be well done, requires a fine balance of self-knowledge and kindness. It requires humility and tact and great understanding of relationships. In receiving, you cannot appear, even to yourself, better or stronger or wiser than the giver, although you must be wiser to do it well. It requires a self-esteem to receive, not self-love, but just a pleasant acquaintance and liking for oneself. Good words. Thank you so much, John Steinbeck. If he were alive, I'd write him a note of thanks. Naomi Shihab Nye. Kindness. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment, like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows, and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to mail letters and purchase bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I you have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend. Thank you, Naomi Shihab Nye. I love that poem. Well, we might run just a few minutes over the hour, not too far. I have some other things I definitely would like to share as we're winding out here. A blessing by Lucy Tapahanso for the graduates of the University of Arizona. This morning, we gather in gratitude for all aspects of sacredness, the air, the warmth of fire, bodies of water, plants, the land, and all animals and humankind. We gather to honor our students who have achieved the extraordinary accomplishment of earning doctoral or master's degrees. We gather to honor their parents, grandparents, children, family members, and friends who have traveled with them on their path to success. They have traveled far distances to be here this morning. We honor their devotion. May we remember that holiness exists in the ordinary elements of our lives. We are grateful for a homeland that has always thrived on a glorious array of people and their diverse cultures, histories, and beliefs. We acknowledge the generosity of the Tohono O'odham in granting this land on which we learn, teach, celebrate accomplishments, and sometimes mourn losses. May we always cherish our ancestors as we prepare for the days ahead. May we remember that we exist because of their prayers and their faith. We are blessed with distinct and melodious tongues. Our languages are treasures of stories, songs, ceremonies, and memories. May each of us remember to share our stories with one another, because it is only through stories that we live full lives. May the words we speak go forth as bright beads of comfort, joy, humor, and inspiration. We have faith that the graduates will inspire others to explore and follow their interests. Today we reflect on a rainbow of creation. Some of us came from the east, where bright crystals of creativity reside. They are the white streaks of early morning light when all is born again. We understand that in Tucson, the Rincon Mountains are our inspiration for beginning each day. The Rincons are everlasting and always present. Those who came from the south embody the strength of the blue mountains that encircle us. The Santaritas instill in us the vigorous spirit of youthful learning. Others came from the west. They are imbued with the quiet yellow glow of dusk. They help us achieve our goals. Here in the middle of the valley, the Tsa'a, the basket of life, the Tucson Mountains teach us to value our families. The ones from the north bring the deep, restorative powers of night's darkness. Their presence renews us. The Santa Catalina Mountains teach us that, though the past may be fraught with sorrow, it was strengthened by the prayers of our forebears. We witnessed the recent fires the mountains suffered, and in their recovery we see ourselves on our own journeys. We understand that we are surrounded by mountains, Zi, and thus we are made of strength. Zi nihi nizi. We are strong ourselves. We are surrounded by mountains that help us negotiate our daily lives. May we always recognize the multitude of gifts that surround us. May our homes, schools, and communities be filled with the wisdom and optimism that reflect a generous spirit. We are grateful for all blessings, seen and unseen. May we fulfill the lives envisioned for us at our birth. May we realize that our actions affect all people and the earth. May we live in the way of beauty and help others in need. May we always remember that we were created as people who believe in one another. We are grateful, Holy Ones, for the graduates, as they will strengthen our future. All is beautiful again. And then there's a lovely, I can't pronounce it, lovely chant in her native language. Thank you so much, Lucy Tapahanso. Yes. Okay. Speaking of John O'Donohue, a blessing from him. On this echoing day of your birth, may you open the gift of solitude in order to receive your soul. Enter the generosity of silence to hear your hidden heart. Know the serenity of stillness to be enfolded anew by the miracle of your being. So not just for the newly born, but every day, in a way, there's a newbornness, I feel, to our lives, in your life. The artist, farmer, explorer I shared that poem about, Steve Burnett, and he is also in a recent deeper well-dweller conversation in the poetosphere with me, said this. And it's about, I asked him about what advice would you give someone who's seeking to be a deeper well-dweller, dwelling more deeply in their life. He said, I'd remind them they're not here by accident, that they are the children of their parents and grandparents and great-grandparents and all the ancestors that came before them, who at one point were on their knees praying that their children would succeed. I would remind them that they are the embodiment of those prayers, the living spirit of what their people before them did in their lives to get them to where they are. And that spirit got them here, and what they also have in themselves is something sacred, and that the lessons you get from your labor, that you get from your life, good and bad, are what to hold on to. So my root advice is, in your life and work, be aware of that spirit. Don't let it slip. Hold on to and reflect on it. Know that it's not just your body and your situation that holds you together, but there's real spirit out there that's working for you and through you. Thank you. Thank you, Steve Burnett, for that very much. And, okay, we'll last for now till we're together again over these airwaves, over these thought and feeling waves. This is from the New Jersey countryside, June 2018. It was on the summer solstice. Bring yourself to this day. This solstice day, regenerous day, of new summering, good naturing, the sun so greatly lengthening, the trees so freely dancing in ever deeper, ever greener ecstasies, the clouds caressing the open skies and dotting the eyes of sailors and mountaineers, painters and sonneteers, the waters of lakes and rivers, firths and fjords, bays and sounds, clear and mirroring. Bring yourself, your whole nature, bountifully, spiritly, as bountifully, to this day of balance and beauty, dalliance and euphony, between the boundless heavens and the returning earth, with a lightening heart and long, lengthening breath. Thank you again, friends, for generously leaning in here, for thinking and feeling in. I'd be glad if you share this or other floating poetry show links with your friends. I'd also enjoy getting your comments on these shows, including your experience of this one on generosity. Likewise, any generosity you'd like to show me as a contribution to my broadcasts and all these other shows that have come and are coming, and my poetic arts, all the things I do to create beauty and joy and harmony and to enliven, engage, and encourage. Any contribution would be delightful. You can donate by Venmo to Fivefold, Fivefold at pipeline.com, or by PayPal to the same email, or you can simply mail a check to me to P.O. Box 1032, Westerly, Rhode Island, 02891, or contribute through the Donate tab at thepoetorialist.com. Is there some yet explored theme you'd like me to do a broadcast on? If so, email me, Colin at thepoetosphere.com. I can be privately hosted or sponsored as a working poet in residence in the U.S. or elsewhere, at times to create a new flight of poetic art and dedicate it to a patron. If that's you, email me to explore. Meanwhile, you can hear all the broadcasts online on YouTube, currently on the Floating Poetry playlist there, ultimately on many other platforms. They do come to you through the Poetosphere, the oasis of possibility I'm guiding, which you can explore as a visitor or subscriber. All are welcome. I do invite you to explore it. There's an array of free content there. And you can get a feeling, too, for the growing community of kindred spirits that are contributing to it and helping evolve it. That could be you as well, if you like. I'm also making, might be of interest, month-long and year-long subscriptions available for you and fellow listeners at a very reduced membership using the code GLADTIDINGS, all one word, GLADTIDINGS, whether for yourself or to give as a special gift to someone else. Many have appreciated the gift of a month in the Poetosphere, some a year, to get their senses wet. If you're interested, you can tune in on every major podcast platform to Chloe Goodchild, founder of The Naked Voice, who is interviewing me in her Voce Dialogue series, VOCE, about compassion, the poetics of life, self, possibility, and more. Just search for Voce Dialogues and Season 2, Episode 2. And there you will find us. Meanwhile, I hope you'll lean in here soon again. Until then, dear listeners, may you be filled with a constant spirit of giving, of open-handedness. Be generous with your time and care and your resources if you have extra ones, helping to support others through their challenges, their needs, or to help realize their dreams, their greater possibilities. Encouraging others in welcome ways, one of the most valuable gifts of all we can give anyone. Be generous in your listening, in your sharing, in your loving. Gracious in your hospitality. May you remember and appreciate how generous others have been with you, their gestures of kindness, small and large, across your life. May you be grateful for all the ways, places, and times nature offers you its beauty and bounty, its life-giving source energy. The more generous we are, the more generous we want to be, the more others are inspired to be giving, the more charitable and grateful the world around us becomes. Goodbye for now, and good spirits, generous spirits.